Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here with the second half of Outsiders and first Moondog.
Is gaining great political mileage with this line that somehow Labor is rolling out the red carpet to terrorists by questioning some of the laws that they're putting forward here. But, as we are doing in the studio today, when you actually, look at the complexity of the situation, you realise that what they're proposing to do is an absolute abomination.
And yet Stephanie Bill Shorten is on side with this, it would seem. He's slight equivocation, but in terms of general principle.
Yeah, look, I think that is a symptom of something else. I think that's Shorten actually not knowing how to differentiate his party line from the coalitions. I think that's a problem that Labor has had periodically throughout the last decade or so. I think we saw something pretty similar in the lead up to in the last couple of terms of the Howard government. The coalition and the Labor policies were pretty much identical, and it wasn't until they were able to differentiate that they had any success in the.
Is this purely political, James? I mean, we're going to have this legislation introduced the last day of sitting in this coming week. It will presumably go to committee. It will face a hostile Senate. Is this just about politics and on a very dangerous principle?
No, I don't think it's. I think that's unfair. I think that, although I have concerns, I think that's not a fair judgment. But what I want to know is why the legislation that was passed a few months ago to make it more easy to prosecute foreign fighters wasn't sufficient. What do they know now that they didn't know then? Was the drafting process inadequate? Did they not do what was necessary then? It seems in this issue that every 3 to 5 months we need an extra bill, a new power, an extra law that gives the executive more authority, and that is a troubling.
Of course, that's just basic political. Sorry, Jonathan, I've just got to jump in there. I mean, that's James has just made the point really that this is all about politics. You just keep putting a brick on top as part of your strategy. Okay, we need to throw some new red meat into this debate to keep it on the front pages, to keep everybody talking about it, so that we're out there debating our issues. It's another rule of politics.
Sadly, politics playing with important, as we've discussed, constitutional principle. Thank you to our outsiders this morning. Nicholas Rees, James Patterson and Stephanie Convery. 6 minutes to 10, Dog? Yes, I think so. Have you ever wondered what it is that gets people upset about wind turbines? Well.
Hello, Patriots. Welcome to First Dog on the Moon's Guide to Modern Living. I'm Walkley Award-winning cartoonist for The Guardian Australia, First Dog on the Moon. In honour of the soon-to-be-appointed Wind Farm Commissioner, the First Dog on the Moon Institute proudly presents all 244 symptoms of wind turbine syndrome, as collated by actual researchers at Sydney University. These are all true things people have reported. I'm not just making it up like I usually do. And because this is Radio National, we present them here without judgment in the form of a poem. If you live near a wind farm, you may find you have the following symptoms. You have a lack of concentration, different sorts of palpitation, painful eardrum perforation, suicidal ideation, this weirdy kind of lip vibration, it buggers up the whale migration. You have painful urination. Your aging is accelerated, PTSD is aggravated, cows and chickens born mutated, triglycerides are elevated, weight gain, weight loss, excess sleep, birth defects in all your sheep. You may be afflicted by bleeding ears and cows that die, lose your bowels, fall off your horse, confused, fatigued, and then, of course, you're suffering from nervous thinking, also from excessive drinking. All the crickets disappear, lots of folks get diarrhea, then there's that pain in your ear, eyes too dry, worms all die, all emotions running high, cows abandon their own calves, piglets dying, too much crying, cardiovascular disease, feels like you're covered in fleas, some develop allergies, death, depression, sinusitis, stress, staring blankly, and pruritus, inflamed guts, spastic colitis. You will feel anxiety, noise hypersensitivity, and then a loss of energy. Sheep's wool is poor quality, hippocampal atrophy, immunodeficiency, discord in your family, stomach ulcers, upset sheep, night sweats, strokes and disturbed sleep, stomach acid, problems speeching, cataracts and dolphins beaching, respiratory tract infection, arcing teeth and indigestion. You'll get pericardial thickness and something French called Meniere's sickness. You find your cows become aggressive, your collagen becomes excessive, Asperger's worsens, asthma too, popping ears and problem poo. You might find difficulty reading, diabetes, problems breathing, inflammatory bowel disease, laboured breathing makes you wheeze. It even kills off all the bees. And this one bloke's dog got epilepsy. Some dogs just stare at the wall, refuse to work work or chase a ball, and there are dogs with itchy ears who chew small stones and piss in the living room, the little bastards. Paralysis and muscle twitches, leukemia and skin that itches, problems with relationships, dying goats, vibrating hips, yawning, headache and sore legs. Chickens won't lay any eggs, kids act bad, their heart's affected, different cancers are detected, car sickness, gastro and chest pain, even tumours in the brain, hypertension, herpes too. Maybe you are someone who gets atherosclerosis or eyeballs that are really sore and has to pee a whole lot more, conjunctivitis and general malaise. Crab metamorphosis suffers delays. That's true. Dry retching, panic, falling down, losing hair, that makes you frown. Losing confidence as well, and muscle tone, then your glands swell, hemorrhoids and painful hips. Peacocks in relationships have problems. I swear that is true. There's nausea, lymphoma too. Cows act as if electrocuted, air and water both polluted. The worms get up and leave the dirt. There's dizziness and your breasts hurt. Loss of hearing, heart attacks, clubfoot horses, painful backs. You might get the diagnosis you've got multiple sclerosis. Your period comes every week. Now that's enough to make you shriek. Increases in violent crime, frantic scratching all the time. Your emus die, you grind your teeth, sores on your feet, on top, beneath. It interferes with your pacemaker. The shoulder pains, enough to break a man and then to bring him low, though that could be the vertigo. How many's that? I just lost count. There really is a huge amount, but anyway, we're out of time. So here's a few that do not rhyme. Confused echidnas, litters of unhealthy kittens, and my personal favourite, visceral vibratory vestibular disturbance. Don't go catching that one, patriots. Thank goodness we're spending money on a wind farm commissioner. This has been First Dog on the Moon's Guide to Modern Living, proudly brought to you by the First Dog on the Moon Institute.
I want a First Dog on the Moon commissioner. That's it for RN Sunday Extra today. If you've missed anything,
Well, isn't that the joke of it? Tony Abbot, who thinks that wind farms are visually awful, and there is no doubt that there is evidence that some people complain that they feel sick. He's decided to appoint a wind turbine or wind farm commissioner to do nothing but receive complaints from people who imagine that they feel discombobulated because the wind turbine is having a bad effect on them. Infrasound, they've obviously never slept in a town beside the beach. They've never switched the lights off and heard the rhythmic boom, swish of the waves coming up the beach and flowing back out to sea. That doesn't cause them problems, but a windmill on the horizon does. They abolished the Commissioner for Disability in Australia. There used to be a government factotum who did nothing but look for issues or receive complaints from disabled people who reckon that they needed to get a better, fairer go in life. The people who live in a wheelchair, who got stopped by the steps at every bloody government building in Australia because there was no wheelchair access, they went to the Disability Commissioner, and the Disability Commissioner pulled strings and organised for committees to look into the matter, and now there's not a government building in Australia that doesn't have a wheelchair ramp beside its door for the people whose legs work. We got rid of the Disability Commissioner because we couldn't afford that. We're into austerity, you see. But we're going to have a wind turbine commissioner because Tony Abbot thinks wind turbines are visually awful. He's obviously never looked at a coal mine. He's obviously never looked at a bloody coal-fired power station or tried to drive within 100 miles of one when it's drizzling and you have to keep washing the rain off your windscreen because of the coal dust coming down in the drizzle. He is also pushing ahead with his scandalous plot to remove the right for any kind of due process or trial for anybody who's not on what he thinks of as Team Australia. If the immigration commissioner, minister rather, can have a suspicion that somebody is supporting terrorism, they lose all their rights as a citizen. Well, why the hell do we need all these other bloody trials? Why do we need to have evidence that somebody's committed a crime if all it takes is a suspicion? You see, we're going down the American law and order, law enforcement, political connection route, where anybody who is suspected of anything must be treated as if they're guilty. It's actually worse than fucking Nazi Germany in 1945, because at least they had people's courts. It might have been as crooked as a fucking dog's hind leg, but at least Hitler had courts. Tony Abbot doesn't fucking want courts. He doesn't want to be a nation of laws. He wants to be a nation of men, of suspicious politicians. However, I suggest that Tony Abbot's blood pressure took a big hit this week, because Tony Abbot is not only a fervent Catholic supremacist, a football bully, he's a half-trained Jesuit priestling. And for the first time, they've got a Jesuit Pope. What's happened? The Jesuit Pope has said, Tony Abbot, you're a filthy fucking scumbag on global warming issues. That's what the Pope said. It is morally and ethically wrong in the eyes of the Catholic Christian God theory to trash the planet faster, more efficiently, to make a bigger profit quicker before somebody else fucks the commons first. And sadly, fuck the planet faster for a bigger profit before somebody else fucks it first. That is the Liberal Party doctrine, as evidenced by this morning's background briefing report, which explains how in the last 2 years the Barnett Liberal government in Western Australia has come up with a brain fart that, if they look in the dictionary at the whitefellas' definition of what makes a cathedral into a sacred site, and then they apply that to Aboriginal sites, they can remove 1,265 Aboriginal sacred sites from the map, because there's no fucking cathedral there, and the blackfellas don't show up every week to have a church service. To a white supremacist Christian fundamentalist, it doesn't look like a church to them, so therefore it's not a sacred site. So therefore, they can fucking mine it. They can bulldoze it. They can take 30,000-year-old rock carvings and they can build a fucking gas terminal there. So, after shitting on everybody else's God theory, now Tony Abbot's God theory's turned around and bit him in the bum. The Pope actually likes fucking windmills. The Pope doesn't like coal mines. The Pope doesn't like coal-fired power stations. I think it's great. It's the nicest piece of karmic feedback I've seen happen to Tony Abbot for a long time. And while we're worried about all these terrible terrorists, do you know how many bombs exploded in the United States between 1965 and 1975 as a result of people taking protest action against conscription in the Vietnam War? Over 1,900. That 190 terrorist bombings per year for 10 years. And that didn't cause anybody to lose their civil rights. That didn't cause habeas corpus or free speech, freedom of association, freedom of movement, freedom of communication. It didn't cause them to be scrubbed out in the excited states while they were going off. Oh no. But now, if a 14-year-old in England rings up a 16 or 17-year-old in Melbourne and they talk about carving their initials on a policeman, that's a globe-shattering terrorist event, and we got to redraw the entire Australian Constitution so that Tony Abbot doesn't need to have courts, because Tony Abbot is worse than Hitler. He is. Stalin had fucking star trials, not Tony Abbot. He is a bastard of the first water. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.